Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My Karen neighbor keeps cutting my roses, so I call the cops on her. After that, am I the jerk for not letting my daughter use her college fund for a wedding or a house? And after that, pay your staff less than your colleagues? Lose them all. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to cut down anyone's roses. How about I spray them with some Roundup instead? So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My Karen neighbor keeps cutting my roses, so I call the cops on her. So I, 25 female, have lived in my house my entire life. My parents moved and gave it to me when I turned 21. Ever since I was born, we've had roses in our yard. Well, I recently got a new neighbor, 31 female, and she is apparently allergic to my roses. She lives right next door and won't stop complaining about my roses. I don't want to get rid of them. I think she should have considered that I had plants when she first went to buy the house. It's not like it was the cheapest option or anything. I live in a pretty expensive neighborhood. A few days ago, I came home from work and found pieces of my rose bush on the ground. At first, I thought nothing of it, but it kept happening. I decided to get a camera in my front yard so I would know what was going on. I came home yesterday and checked the cameras, and there she is. Clear as day, you could see my neighbor, wearing some mask, chopping away at my bushes. I was obviously outraged when I saw the footage and went up to her door and threatened to call the police if I saw her do it again. She called me selfish and rude and said that I should have taken the roses out because she was allergic. I'm not getting rid of my roses. It's not my fault she's allergic and she chose to buy a house next to someone who grows roses. She said that she could get hurt, but I don't think it's my problem. Am I the jerk? Edit. So I called the cops last night, and I'm going to be pressing charges for trespassing and destruction of private property. I also asked her why she didn't just use some kind of anti-allergen, and she said she couldn't trust doctors with her diagnosis, whatever that means. Not the jerk. You need to call the police regardless and show them the video because she's not going to stop. I see a couple of things that your neighbor could be in trouble for. 1, trespassing, and 2, destruction of private property. Since you have video proof, this should be a quick and easy case. Please call the police and report it. Get an estimate of the cost of the damaged plants and take her to small claims court for replacement costs. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the neighbor? Please let us know. I'd be petty and plant tons of more rose bushes right next to the fence line. Am I the jerk for not letting my daughter use her college fund for a wedding or a house? Backstory. I, 43 female, have 4 kids. Elle, who's 22, female. Katie, who's 17, Cam, who's 15, and Isla, who's 5, and I'm also currently pregnant. Me and my husband, who's 50, started adding to college funds every month for each of our kids, pretty much as soon as we found out that we were pregnant. I won't say the exact amount, but my husband has an excellent job, so it's more than most. We never told our kids because it just didn't feel necessary. Elle got pregnant when she turned 16 and ended up dropping out of school. I was very disappointed, but I understood. However, I was under the impression she would return later, but she has no plans to. The dad stuck around, and now they have one more kid who's 3 and one on the way. They're engaged, but they don't plan to marry until they can afford it. They were doing okay financially for a while, but due to the market right now, they've been struggling because Elle can't get a job since she doesn't have a diploma, so we've been loaning them money. Katie is a senior and just got accepted into college. We've been setting everything up, and obviously she knows about the fund now. Katie and Elle were talking, and she was telling Elle about the school, and Elle asked how she was planning on paying for it. Katie responded, "My college fund." I was in the room while they were talking, and this made me panic. We had just planned on splitting it between the remaining 4 since we knew they were going to college. Elle asked me if they all had one, and I wasn't going to lie, so I said yes. She got really excited and went to call her fiancé and tell him the good news. I was confused and told her she couldn't have the money. She asked why, and I said it was for school. She got upset and left my house. The next day, I get a call from Elle. She was crying and begging me to let her have the funds so she could finally afford a down payment and maybe even a wedding. I told her she could have the money if she went back to school, and whatever money was left over, she could use for whatever she wanted. She got super mad and started yelling at me and saying it's her money. I told her that it was my money, and these were my decisions, and she hung up. Now we're being harassed by her fiancé's family. They aren't as fortunate as us, calling us jerks and a lot of other names, saying it's all going to go to waste if she doesn't use it. We're setting her up for failure, etc. Now I'm wondering if I'm the jerk because my dad said we should just give her the money as we saved it for her after all. So, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I'm going to be downvoted a million times, but hear me out. You put money into a college fund for each kid. The whole purpose was to help with their education. It's a generous fund, and not everyone is able to do that for one kid, let alone 4, plus one on the way. She made other choices, and that's fine. Just because she was unaware of the college fund doesn't mean she can just collect it now after finding out. She was happy with her relationship until she found out, right? But can you find a compromise to smooth everything over? Say she gets her GED and 1 to 2 years in a community college or trade school, graduating with an AA or certification when the rest of the money is hers. Would that satisfy you and your husband? Plenty of stay-at-home moms have put themselves through nursing or dental assistant or hygiene school, for example, with only grants and loans, and did it through sheer hard work and determination. Her fiance's family had absolutely no business sticking their noses into this. I find that appalling and disrespectful. They need to be told to butt out. I agree. Find a middle ground. She can't move forward in life without a GED, so set some conditions around that. Once she completes her GED, you will give her a certain percentage of the money. Once she completes an associate's or certificate program, you will give her the remaining amount. She should also qualify for financial aid. OP, not the jerk. But again, I think a compromise is the way to go. I also don't think expecting her to go to the traditional college is feasible. Everyone sucks here. Should she feel automatically entitled to the money? No, but that's about the only way she's a jerk. There's a whole flock of reasons why you are. You speak dismissively about the committed man who's stuck by her side through teenage pregnancy, another baby, and has asked her to marry him. You speak as if she's less than because of a mistake she made in high school. You say you're under the impression she would return later, but she didn't know about the education fund. So do you think maybe her lack of funding would have influenced her decision to not go back when she had a baby at home? You are also under an assumption that all your remaining kids will decide on further education. That's a pretty silly assumption. It's your money. You can do whatever you want with it. But as a grandmother, you think you'd be happy that your daughter wants to give her kids a home and 2 married parents. Edit. To everyone coming at me, check out a few more of OP's comments. It's not about money or education. It's about control. Not the jerk. It's not her money. It never was. And it was never a trust fund. It was money set aside to fund an education for her, and you've made it clear that it is very generously available to her to do exactly that. Frankly, as a 22-year-old high school dropout with 2 kids and a third on the way, at this point, she should be realizing more than ever, if she's matured at all, and based on her and her husband's struggles of the last few years, that going back to school and getting an education or vocational training of some sort is the best possible thing that she could do for her future and her family's financial stability. The fact that she doesn't see this, that she thinks you owe her something, and perhaps most importantly, that she thinks that money given to her should be spent on a wedding and perhaps a house, which later she likely couldn't afford the taxes and upkeep on, tells me that she's still making bad choices, only now she's making them as an adult with dependents. You are absolutely not the jerk, and I think it's actually important you stick to your guns here, for her sake. Tell her that the money will continue to be available to her to use for an education, which would help her in the long run far more than a wedding or a house down payment, but it isn't a trust fund, and it never was. You're the jerk. While you may have the legal right to withhold the money, this is not a thread about what you can do, but what you should do. Your daughter made some bad choices, but she can't unring the bell, and the entire purpose of a college fund is to help your kids to get a head start in life without the burden of crushing debt. Let your daughter use the money to buy a house. Let her use it to start a business. Let her use it to do something so she can get her life back on track. If you're dead set on it being used for college and nothing else, at least put it in a trust where she can use it later in life or her kids can use it later in their life. Consider also that what you're doing is making a large transfer of wealth to her siblings and not to her. This is one of the ways that estrangements occur. Be prepared for lots of fighting between you and your daughter, between your husband and your daughter, and between your daughter and siblings. All because you were insistent that the money go to college and not a house or a business. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her daughter? Please let us know.
The money was saved for your college and to give you a good future. Not for you to have an extravagant wedding, which is a total waste of money, or for you to make a down payment on a house that you would end up losing because you can't afford it.
Pay your staff less than your colleagues? Lose them all. I'm going to try to keep this kind of vague because 1, I like the elected official as a person, just not as a boss. 2, I like what they're trying to accomplish in terms of policy. And 3, I don't want this to blow back on me because I'm still in this field. I've spent most of my career working for elected officials. Over the course of my career, I've worked for elected officials at the federal, state, and local level in progressively more involved policy roles. In between, I've done some higher-paying private sector jobs, but I have twice taken pay cuts to return to public serving, working for electeds because I genuinely love the work. The flip side of that is that it's been hard to afford to live in my area on that lower salary. Earlier this year, I was still making less than my last job after 2 years in this office. In early spring, we were talking with one of our colleagues on the shared staff, and she made an offhand comment about how our office had the worst pay of any office for our legislative body. She ended up sharing information about how much other offices pay their staff with our whole office. Turns out, she was more right than she knew. Our office had some of the most experienced staff of any office, and bar none, the lowest pay, even relative to less experienced offices that were less active. Our highest paid staff, other than our manager, didn't crack the 40th percentile of the floor, despite 20 years of experience. I topped out in the 30th percentile for pay with 8 years of relevant experience. I would estimate the average is closer to 3 to 5 years experience for my level of pay. Colleagues I had worked with previously, who I knew had 3 fewer years of experience, were making 20% more than I was with similar or less involved responsibilities. So I did a full analysis of the pay on my floor relative to experience and set up a meeting with the elected to discuss salary, which did not go well. I was told that aside from annual increments, there would be no pay raises, and essentially that I should be happy I had a job. The fact that I had been loyal was irrelevant, as was the fact that anytime there was some weird issue we wanted to explore, I was able to find a solution. Me making less than colleagues in other offices with less experience was not their problem. I was told that if I wanted more pay, I would have to find something new. So after telling my colleagues about the ugly meeting, I did exactly that. I started applying for other jobs in our government, found one that I was highly qualified for, got an interview almost immediately, aced the interviews, and 3 months later, that hiring process is a joke, started with a 65% increase in take-home pay. After hearing about how poorly my salary meeting went, my colleagues didn't bother having their own meetings and just started their own searches. Come the start of the next legislative body after the elections, the only person left will be a new hire that started right before this nonsense went down and a new comms person who started right after I left. Anyone with institutional knowledge about how the body functions or any knowledge about the policy issues they care about has either left or has accepted a new position. My boyfriend is demanding I start tracking my runs so he can see my stats. My boyfriend and I are both runners, though we don't often run together because he's a morning bird and likes to run at 5 or 6 a.m. before he goes to work, and I'm a night owl who likes to run just before sunset. Nowadays, he loves tracking his runs. He has an Apple Watch and loves digging into his heart rate data, speed and time data, etc. He's using a training plan that he sticks to, and it sounds like he spends a lot of time on his runs thinking about technique in his training plan. I'll just go out and run at whatever speed feels good that day, for however long feels good that day. I'll go wherever looks cool or scenic. It really varies depending on my mood and energy level, but I usually run for 30 to 60 minutes, varying my speed a lot. I guess we always both assumed he was the better runner till we decided to do a half marathon charity race together, and I just had a much easier time. We ran side by side, but I just wasn't getting out of breath as often, and I ended up slowing down for most of the race to stay with him. And I was genuinely surprised, because I kinda just use running to help with anxiety. I don't care how the run goes, it's just nice to be outdoors and feel connected with my body. But my boyfriend really wanted to know how I did it. He thought I must have been doing something to train. I joked that I hadn't really. I just ran whenever I was feeling anxious or restless, and work's been making me feel that a lot recently. Since then, every time I've gone running, he's wanted me to use an app to track my route and pace and borrow his Apple Watch. I don't really want to do that. I feel like tracking and analyzing things would ruin my fun. But literally every time he's gotten annoyed at me, even saying stuff, in a kind of joking way, but still, that he talked to his running buddies and untracked runs don't count, and it's basically sacrilege. And on a more serious note, don't you want to know your progress? I said, how about we do a few races a year? I can see my progress that way because they time you. He said he just wants to know how I was training, to get some tips from me. And I told him, honestly, he should just smoke a little or have an espresso first, put a classical music playlist on, and go run wherever looks the prettiest. Maybe it's the enjoyment of the thing that really helps. But I guess he didn't want to try that because he just keeps nagging at me to try his Apple Watch. I feel like he's probably feeling kind of insecure I ran better in the race and is trying to make sense of it, so maybe I'm being too stubborn about not wanting to try it. Am I the jerk for not tracking my runs when my runner boyfriend wants to see it? What did I just read? Not the jerk whatsoever. Your boyfriend is insecure and envious of you. The fact that you had an easier time in the race probably hurt his fragile ego. Untracked runs don't count is utter BS. You don't have to track your runs. Stand your ground because you really don't want to ruin the fun of running. Not the jerk. Tell him to stop turning your healthy coping mechanism into another form of stress. He's being absurd. I'm guessing he's very competitive and wants the motivation of trying to beat your runs. The only other explanation is he wants to track you for reasons unrelated to running, like he's afraid of you cheating on him instead of running or something. Not the jerk. You run because it's fun and for a different purpose than your boyfriend. Untracked runs don't count is BS. I didn't track my runs when I first started because I didn't want to. I track because I'm training for races, but my untracked and tracked runs are still runs and important to me. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend? Please let us know.
Can't even go for a run these days without people trying to tell you what you're doing wrong.
Am I the jerk for choosing my nephews over my significant other's kids? I, 28 female, bought a house 2 years ago. It's a very spacious place, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and a big garden that I've been remodeling and making my own. My fiance and I have been dating for 4 years. He's 32, male, and has 2 kids from a previous marriage who are 8 and 6 that are really good kids. On top of that, I have 2 nephews, my sister's kids, that I absolutely adore and love with my full heart, who are 5 and 3. Now, my fiance and I have been talking about moving in together for about 1 to 2 years, but with the purchase and several custody fights he's had with his ex, it's been difficult. He and the kids were supposed to be moving at the end of this year or the beginning of the next, but sadly, my sister and her husband passed 2 months ago, and my nephews were left alone. I knew I'd be asked to take them in, and I was 100% sure that I wanted to, because I love them, and I wasn't willing to let them go into the system. But I talked to my fiance first. While he wanted me to take them in too, he didn't like that they had priority over his kids. Since I currently have 4 bedrooms, 2 would have to share. And I was against it no matter whom they were, because I don't like the idea of cramping kids into a room. He said it was okay that my nephews could share a room and his kids could have the other 2. I said no. Then he didn't like when I offered for us to move to the basement so that all of the kids could have the rooms, with the idea of my nephew having my room since he's the oldest. Ultimately, as selfish as it was, I decided it was my home and I'll do what's best for my nephews, and due to lack of empathy, we were no longer moving in together, and that we could either plan to add 2 or 3 more bedrooms to the house after we marry, or he could go, because my nephews needed me more right now. So I moved them in, decorated their bedrooms as they liked, and call it a day. I'm still getting texts from him and his family, we haven't broken up, about how I could have made it work, because those kids see me as a mother figure, which is true, and I abandoned them to accommodate my nephews, which is also true, sorta. He called me a jerk, so I don't know. Not the jerk. Red flags all over here. He actually thinks deprioritizing 2 kids who just lost their parents is the right way to go? My guess is that he will always think his kids should be number 1. Cut him loose. And this bedroom situation would just be the start, I bet. He'd have let his own kids do what they want and always be prioritized over the nephews. Not the jerk. Your nephews just lost both of their parents. Where was your fiance's empathy and sympathy for the 2 kids who just lost both of their tethers to the world? His family is right. You could have made it work, if he had been able to get out of his own way. What you offered was absolutely reasonable and entirely workable. Your partner can either graciously take what you offered or not. But yes, you made it workable. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her fiance? Please let us know.
Fiance's definitely the jerk. It's not his house, so it's not his decision. I would have suggested his kids share a room and her nephew share a room. Then the other room will be a guest room.
Am I the jerk for lying to my girlfriend about the pizza I made being gluten-free? My girlfriend, 24 female, works as a model, and she has an incredibly strict diet. Virtually everything she eats is organic and gluten-free, so it makes very difficult to cook for her. We take turns cooking for each other. At first, I tried to look on the bright side and appreciate the fact this would get me to eat healthier. But there are only so many times I can eat salads and sushi for dinner. Last week, I was at my breaking point and decided to make some homemade pizza. I'm Italian. Now, I've made gluten-free versions before, but I find that it tastes gross, so I went with regular white flour. The original plan was for me to eat a bit of pizza while she was out and to make us a couple of Western omelets for dinner. But she came home earlier than expected and caught me pulling the pizza out of the oven. She was so surprised and happy that I made pizza for dinner that I didn't have the heart to tell her that it wasn't gluten-free. A couple days later, she figured out that I lied and accused me of being selfish and unsupportive. I tried explaining to her that she's gorgeous just the way she is and that eating regular food now and then won't change that. I also brought up my concerns about her feeling the need to fixate on her diet when she already has over 10,000 followers on Instagram. This literally brought her to the verge of tears because in her mind, it makes me unsympathetic to the beauty standards expected of her. Am I the jerk? Edit. I did not make my girlfriend sick. She found out because when she was looking for gluten-free flour a couple days later and couldn't find any, she confronted me about the pizza and I confessed. Also, she does not have any medical condition that requires her to avoid gluten. Edit 2. I don't think that a lot of you guys realize that I wasn't trying to deceive her intentionally. The main reason why I said it wasn't gluten-free was because she was excited when she saw the pizza, and I didn't want to take that away from her. You're the jerk. If you don't eat gluten and then you do it, it will give you bowel troubles, even if you're not officially celiac. You made her sick, even if only temporarily. That's not okay. Yeah, this is important. Once you stop eating gluten, it becomes harder to tolerate it. You should never lie about what's in someone else's food. You're the jerk. Never ever lie about what goes into food you're offering other people. The proper course of action would have been to tell her the truth and maybe suggest she just have a half a slice to enjoy the taste and hold her over until those Western omelets later in the day. Am I the jerk for telling my friend that her success is built on handouts and she doesn't get to make comments on other people? I, female 32, have a friend who we'll call Ellie. She's also 32. I've known Ellie since we were around 7 and our mothers are good friends. Ellie has had a very, very privileged life. Her dad is a lawyer and her mom is a dentist. So as you can imagine, Ellie had a lot more luxuries and opportunities than your average person. She grew up going to private schools, having private tutors, going on fancy vacations every year, etc. I won't go into too much detail, but I definitely didn't have a life that was anything like Ellie's. Ellie never had to get a job until she went into residency and medical school when she was 26. When we finished high school at 18, Ellie initially went to business school for 2 years before dropping out, then pursuing medical school. Her parents paid all of her tuition and for all of her living expenses, so Ellie never struggled financially and never had to worry about money. Plus, her mother got Ellie volunteering opportunities so she could get references on her medical school applications. Ellie is now a qualified pediatrician. I'm glad she was able to find a career path she enjoys, and I'm proud of her for finishing school. I know medical school is no walk in the park. I myself am a veterinarian. A few weeks ago, we went to a town event and we bumped into some of my old friends from high school. We chatted for a few minutes, and one of them proudly mentioned she's finishing nursing school. When we went to my house after the event, Ellie made a very rude comment about my old friend, saying that, "I bet she was just too dumb to go to medical school," and went on about how great she is. I told Ellie that what she said was rude and uncalled for. Ellie said that it was the truth. I snapped and told Ellie, "You only became a doctor by getting handouts. You don't get to make comments about other people." Ellie started yelling at me and telling me that I'm a jerk for undermining her hard work and that she still had to work for where she is now. I told her that I know she still had to work hard, but most people don't have parents who can pay all their tuition and living expenses, and she had it easier. Ellie called me a jerk again and said I'm ignorant and said that she still had to work hard. Not the jerk. There are plenty of people who are intelligent enough for medical school, but can only dream of becoming doctors due to barriers in place. A lot of medical schools have rules against students having jobs during their studies. Ellie sounds naive and sheltered. Her comment was extremely rude and unnecessary. Nurses are literally essential for medical establishments to function. If she keeps this attitude up at work, she's not going to have many friends. Unfortunately, when it comes to higher education, intelligence and hard work frequently aren't enough, so her comment isn't even true. Am I the jerk for not wanting to talk to my sister after she didn't even invite me to her wedding? So I, 19 female, have 2 half-sisters, Haley, who's 30, and Sarah, who's 32. Before my dad met my mom and had me, he was married to Mary, who's 60, and had Haley and Sarah. My dad wasn't happy in their marriage, and after around 15 years of being married, they filed for a divorce. 2 to 3 years later, my dad met my mom and they fell in love. My dad didn't want to start a relationship because he didn't want to hurt Haley's and Sarah's feelings, but eventually decided to have me with my mom. which didn't turn out to be a problem since Haley and Sarah were ecstatic to hear they're getting a baby sister. They also never had a problem with my mom. They like her, and my mom is always there to help them when they need help. I saw them a lot growing up, and our relationship was pretty good. Sarah was especially fond of me, inviting me to her place a lot and doing a lot of fun stuff together, like going to the movies, which is why I was devastated when she didn't invite me to her wedding. In 2018, my dad told me Sarah was getting married, and I was overjoyed. I know her fiance, and he's a really nice guy, and I was super excited to go dress shopping since I thought I would be invited too. I wasn't, because Sarah's mom, Mary, never wanted to see me. She's basically been ignoring my existence ever since I was born. My dad and sisters always took care so that I wouldn't run into her when staying at Sarah's place, for example. Sarah never told me I wasn't invited to go dress shopping. I found out by Haley telling me what a nice dress they picked out. I was taken aback, but didn't think too much of it. My sister's wedding was in Italy, and when my dad booked the ticket to go, I realized I wasn't invited since he only booked one. My mom had warned me after they got engaged that I probably wouldn't be invited and to not get my hopes up, but I didn't think Sarah actually wouldn't invite me because her mom can't cope that my dad moved on and had a kid with another woman. What hurt most, though, is that Sarah never told me I wasn't invited. No text, letter, talk, nothing. She just moved on with her life like it never happened. She never tried to talk to me about it. When I saw her at family gatherings after, she only made small talk with me, as if nothing had happened. Ever since then, I kinda detached myself from her and didn't go over to her place with my dad or anything. After a couple months, I completely stopped talking to her because I noticed that my mental health was suffering, and I decided to do what's best for myself, which is going no contact and avoiding her at family gatherings or not going altogether. It's been 4 years, and my dad asked me to maybe talk it out with her. He doesn't want to pressure me to do anything, but he says that family is important and that he would like it if we got along. He also told me he never knew she never told me I wasn't invited, that she told him she had talked to me about it. He understands I'm upset and he doesn't want to get involved. He just told me how he felt. She's also been trying to reach out to me a couple of months ago by asking my dad if he could ask me to have a talk with her, which is why he brought it up in the first place. Am I the jerk for not wanting to have a talk to my sister since it's been so long? Should I just get over it? Edit. I didn't block her on my socials, so she could have reached out to me if she wanted to. She still can. Her number isn't blocked. I only unfollowed her on Instagram. Maybe I should add this wasn't a one-time thing. Her son was born in 2016, and I wasn't invited for his birthday party in 2017 because her mom was there too. I just gave the present I got him to my dad, who gave it to Sarah at the party. She later called me and said, "Thank you." I was a bit bummed out, but understood. Grandmother cancels out aunt. Also, because I saw a lot of comments speculating I might be an affair child and that's why Mary is so offended by my existence, I'm not. Disregarding the fact that my dad would never cheat and that my mom would never degrade herself to be a mistress, they met through mutual friends well after the divorce, and said friends are still in their life and have told me how they met 100 times. Additionally, my dad did stand up for me to her. He criticized her not wanting to invite me, but it was her wedding and they have a weird relationship, in the sense that they argue a lot because they're both hot-headed and stubborn. It's complicated and a lot to get into. I hope I cleared some things up, should have added them to the original post. Not the jerk. And I don't understand why it's up to you to reach out to her. Why hasn't she reached out to you? I don't think your dad getting involved in this is a good idea. Not the jerk. It's been 4 years and she didn't reach out to explain or apologize. And now your father wants to sweep it under the rug and make it your responsibility for something that hurt you and you had no fault in? She knew what she was doing was hurting you because she didn't even have the courage to tell you in person that you weren't invited. Yeah, no. If it happened for the wedding, it's gonna happen when she has kids, and it might happen with your other sister as well. You don't owe her a talk. Your feelings are valid. If your father cared, he would have spoken to her back then. Not the jerk. I hate it when people tell the wronged party to be the bigger person and accept crap because family. Where was your family when you weren't invited to her wedding? Am I the jerk because I told my father if he wants to live with me, he needs to get a job and help out around the house? I, female 30, worked my butt off in high school to get a scholarship because my parents had made it clear that they were only going to pay for my brothers. I had to help my mom with all the house stuff, and any money I made, I had to contribute some to house expenses. I got a full-ride scholarship. I didn't tell my parents. They assumed I would be attending the local community college and basically being their caregiver going on. I packed my laptop, my clothes, and that's about it. I left for university and went low contact. I just kept in touch to check on my mom. Neither of my brothers managed to finish university. I got my degree and went to work. I went to work for an FAANG. I make good money, and I do not live in a city with a high cost of living. My dad and brothers blamed me for their failures because they had to fend for themselves with only my mom to do the housework, laundry, cooking, and grocery shopping. My mom finally had enough last year, and I let her move in with me. She gets to relax in my home, takes care of my kid, she walks my dog, and she's teaching my husband how to cook food from our country. She's living the life of Riley. My father and brothers are not doing well. My brothers work for my uncle's plumbing business with my dad. In a few years, they will be making good money, but they aren't yet. My dad says he deserves to rest like my mother does. He's my father, and my family is saying I should help him out. So I talked to my mom and made sure she was okay with it. Then I called him and said he could move into the apartment over my garage, but he would have to contribute to the household and do chores. He's calling me selfish, disrespectful, and ungrateful. My brothers have joined in. I've even received calls and messages from family in our home country telling me that I'm a terrible daughter. I gave most of my money to him from 18 to 14. I did all the chores along with my mother when I lived at home. I think that's enough gratitude and pay. Am I the jerk? Edit. I forgot. I give my mom money for helping even though she insists I don't have to. My husband and I also bought her a car so she can do her own thing and run errands and such. Thank you everyone for the judgments and advice. I just got off the phone with him and I'm shaking. I asked him if he was sure he didn't want the room above the garage. He said no, and I said that I understand, but it was all that was available. Then I hung up and I blocked him and my brothers. Not the jerk, but I'm not sure letting him move in is a good idea on any level. If he talks to you this way now, it's not going to get any better. Not the jerk, but why, oh why, do you want to invite your father back into your home or over the garage? You know he's going to impose on you, expect you to clean and cook for him, do his laundry, etc. Tell him to hire a housekeeper if he's suffering at home without someone to do all the work he apparently feels that he can't. If you want to help him pay for the housekeeper. A man, ideally. Not the jerk. Your parents chose to have you and not the other way around. Your parents should be helping you out. I applaud your mother. She sounds like a great help. However, your father sounds absolutely selfish to do what he wants. Just be careful that he moves in and suddenly can't work. Good luck. Not the jerk. Do not let your father come back into your life. Your brothers can sacrifice and care for him. Him coming near to you and your mother will only cause you stress and grief.
Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.